Welcome to Bible Fiber, where we explore the textures and shades of the biblical tapestry. I am Shelley Neese, president of the Jerusalem Connection. We are a Christian organization dedicated to sharing the stories of Israel's people, both ancient and modern. I'm also the author of the book Bible Fiber, a 52-week study of the 12 minor prophets available on Amazon. This week's Torah portion covers Numbers 25:10 to 31, and it is titled Phinehas. Phinehas is the name used in English Bibles, so that's the name I'll use in this podcast. Phinehas was a prominent biblical priest whose leadership started in the wilderness wanderings and continued into the early period of the Judges. He was the grandson of Aaron and the eventual high priest of Israel. The Torah portion picks up where the previous portion left off, with the prophet Balaam and the king of Moab dead set on breaking up the Israelite encampment. When Balaam tried but failed to curse the Israelites, he gave the king of Moab some advice: make them curse themselves by inducing them to sin. They sent Moabite women into the Israelite camp, enticing the men into sexual relationships. These relationships were used as bait to draw the Israelite men into the worship of Baal. In Canaanite mythology, Baal was the god of the storm, rain, and fertility. Worship rites involved cultic prostitution and ritual sex. Balaam and Balak's plot worked. Numbers 25:1-3 states that the people began to have illicit relations with the women of Moab, who invited them to the sacrifices of their gods. It even states that Israel yoked itself to Baal of Peor. In Israel's history, this is the first open, full-scale spiritual rebellion involving the Canaanite god Baal. After this incident, Baal becomes the ultimate spiritual and political thorn in Israel's side for nearly the rest of the Hebrew Bible. The apostasy triggered a devastating divine plague that killed 24,000 Israelites. The straw that broke the camel's back, however, came when Zimri, a leader from the tribe of Simeon, marched into the camp with a Midianite woman. The Bible notes the blatant nature of the act. He did it before the eyes of Moses and before the eyes of all the congregation of the Israelites. Simeon's action publicly challenged Moses' authority. Moses, who was already 120 years old, seemed paralyzed by the sheer audacity of the rebellion. Someone had to step into the leadership vacuum, and that someone was Phinehas the priest. Phinehas fell into a zealous rage and stabbed both Zimri and the woman when they were in the tent. What the modern reader might view as voluntary manslaughter, the Bible describes as being zealous for the honor of his God. To be sure, Phinehas was not upset because Zimri violated any laws against racial purity or tribal allegiance. Remember, Moses was married to a Midianite woman, Zipporah, who is loved and admired in biblical tradition. The problem was that the Israelite men were breaking their covenant with God by letting the pagan women lure them into idolatrous practices. Centuries later, the psalmist remembers Phinehas' bravery and commitment in Psalm 106, retelling the story of Israel's rebellions in the wilderness. The psalm recounts, "Then they yoked themselves to the Baal of Peor and ate sacrifices offered to the dead. Then Phinehas stood up and interceded, and the plague was stopped. And that has been reckoned to him as righteousness from generation to generation forever." The phrase "reckoned to him as righteousness" mirrors the language used for Abraham's faith, elevating Phinehas to the level of faith of the original patriarch. Phinehas continued to play a major role in the national spiritual life of Israel for many years. In Numbers 31, before the people entered the land, God commanded Moses to wage a war of vengeance against the Midianites. When Moses mobilized the army, selecting 1,000 men from each of the 12 tribes, he did not appoint a military general to lead them. Instead, he sent Phinehas, the Bible's first general priest. The text notes that Phinehas went into battle carrying the vessels of the sanctuary and the trumpets for signaling. During the campaign, the Israelites defeated the Midianites and killed their 5 kings. Numbers 31:8 also notes that they killed Balaam with the sword. Although in the Torah, Phinehas most often held a sword in his hand and righteous anger in his heart, by the time of Joshua, he acted more as a wise diplomat for the community. In Joshua 22, Phinehas served as a lead negotiator to prevent a catastrophic civil war. The crisis occurred just after the conquest of Canaan concluded. The warrior men from the eastern tribes, Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, had fulfilled their vow to fight alongside the western tribes until the promised land was secure. With the battles won, Joshua blessed them and sent them home to their families on the east bank of the Jordan River. However, on their trek back, right at the border of the Jordan, these eastern tribes built a massive imposing altar. Word quickly spread to the main assembly of Israel gathered at Shiloh. Building an unauthorized altar looked like a blatant rebellion against God and a slide back into idolatry. The western tribes immediately mobilized an army, fully prepared to launch a devastating preemptive military strike to purge the sin before divine wrath struck the whole nation. Before launching an assault, Israel sent a high-level diplomatic delegation to Gilead to confront the suspected rebels. Phinehas was chosen to lead the group, accompanied by 10 tribal chiefs. When Phinehas met the eastern leaders, he reminded them of what happened in the wilderness wanderings, when the people worshipped Baal instead of the one true God. He asked, "Was not the sin of Peor enough for us? Up to this very day we have not cleansed ourselves from that sin, even though a plague fell on the community of the Lord. And are you now turning away from the Lord?" Showing pastoral concern and a desire to prevent sin rather than punish it, Phinehas even offered a material compromise. He told them that if they felt their land across the Jordan was somehow unclean or cut off, they should abandon it, cross back over the river, and take a share of the land where the Lord's tabernacle stood. The eastern tribes explained that the altar was never intended for sacrifices, burnt offerings, or alternative worship. They built it out of anxiety for the future. They wanted their own altar not as a place of ritual, but something that could be a visual witness proving to future generations that the tribes on both sides of the river served the exact same God. Hearing this, Phinehas diffused the situation. He acknowledged their faithfulness, stating, "Today we know that the Lord is among us because you have not committed this breach of faith against the Lord." The delegation returned to Shiloh with the report, and the war plans were dismantled. This pivotal moment demonstrated that Phinehas was fundamentally a man of diplomacy, wisdom, and peace. When he used a weapon against Zimri, it was because the rebellion was already going full throttle. But in Joshua 22, when given the time and space to investigate, Phinehas chose dialogue and stopped the bloodshed. In Judges 20, Phinehas appeared again at a critical turning point in Israel's early history. A conflict erupted after the inhabitants of Gibeah, a Benjamite city, committed a horrific crime against a traveling Levite's concubine. When the tribe of Benjamin refused to hand over the perpetrators, the other 11 tribes unified to launch a military campaign against their own kin. Despite outnumbering the Benjamites, the unified tribes of Israel suffered unexpected devastating losses. They marched into battle twice, and both times the Benjamites routed them, leaving 40,000 Israelite soldiers dead. Stunned and humbled, the entire assembly retreated to Bethel, where the Ark of the Covenant had been temporarily relocated from Shiloh. The people fasted, offered burnt offerings, and sought a deeper spiritual reckoning. They realized they had rushed into a fraternal war without truly seeking God's direction or examining their own spiritual state. Phinehas was then serving as the elder high priest. The narrative records that Phinehas ministered before the ark in those days, asking God if they should go out once more to battle against their kinsfolk, the Benjamites, or if they should stop. The Lord answered him to go up, promising to give them into their hand the next day. This intervention shifted the entire nature of the inquiry. In their first 2 attempts, the Israelites asked who should attack first, assuming the war itself was a foregone conclusion. Under Phinehas' guidance, they resigned the outcome to the divine will. Looking across his entire life, Judges 20 highlights the remarkable evolution of Phinehas as a leader. During the wilderness wanderings, he was a young zealot operating in a moment of complete structural collapse, using physical force to halt a crisis. In Joshua 22, He was a mature diplomat, using communication to save the eastern tribes from an unnecessary war. And in Judges 20, he stands as the venerable high priest of Israel, using the sacred space of the altar to heal a fractured nation and restore their broken covenant relationship with God. That's it for this week. Join me next week in reading Numbers 32 to 36:13. If you would like to get the study questions that go with this reading, please visit our website at thejerusalemconnection.us. Shabbat Shalom and Am Israel Chai.